Welcome to Brew Cheese, where we brew up the finest of cheese. If you're new to our channel, we make budget-friendly deck techs, often with an unexpected twist to keep your playgroup guessing. Today's video is a deck tech featuring a commander chosen by one of our viewers, so a special thanks to Forgotten One for the suggestion. That commander is Inalla, Archmage Ritualist. She's a red, black, blue, and 2 for a 4/5 human wizard, and if she's in the command zone or on the battlefield, she lets us pay 1 generic whenever we play a wizard to make a 1-turn temporary copy of it. When she's in play, we can tap 5 untapped wizards to make an opponent lose 7 life. So what's our strategy? We're going to play wizards, all the wizards we can fit into every role in the deck. One of the primary roles we'll use wizards for is to ping, or to tap to deal 1 damage to a target. And then because 1 damage at a time is definitely not going to win you any games, we're going to add various enhancements to make those 1 damage instances much more devastating. Finally, we're going to win through either Inalla's ability or through one of our secondary win conditions. Our ramp package starts off with 1 of each of the signets that we can run in our deck. That's Dimir, Izzet, and Rakdos signets, each of which costs 2 and lets us pay 1 into them to convert that into 2 mana of that respective guild's colors. We're also running 2 of the 3 possible talismans, Talisman of Creativity and Talisman of Dominance. They both cost 2, tap for a colorless, or tap for 1 of 2 different colors. Sadly, the Rakdos one was a little out of our reach price-wise, but we'll be making up for it. We're running Prismatic Lens, a 2-mana artifact that taps for colorless, or we can tap it to filter 1 mana into another kind. We're also including Sea Scryer, which is a blue and 1 for a 1/1 Merfolk wizard. I know it doesn't say wizard on the card, but it does in the Oracle text. It also taps for a colorless, or taps to let us convert any color mana into a blue. Apprentice Wizard costs 2 blue and 1 for a 0/1 human wizard, and it lets us pay a blue into it to tap it to create 3 colorless mana. Pillar of Origins is a 2-mana artifact that has us choose a creature type when it enters the battlefield, and then it taps for any color mana, but can only be used to cast a creature of the chosen type. Stony Brook Banneret is a blue and 1 for a 1/1 Merfolk wizard with Island Walk, and it makes all of our Merfolk and wizard spells cost 1 less. If you're wondering, a creature that's both a Merfolk and a wizard will only cost 1 less, not 2. We're running 1 final ramp piece with Commander's Sphere, which costs 3 for an artifact that taps for any color mana in our commander's color identity. We can also sacrifice it at any time to draw a card. The draw suite kicks off with the Zami Lady of Scrolls. She's 3 blue and 2 for a 0/2 human wizard, and she lets us tap an untapped wizard we control to draw a card. There will be plenty of times where this will be the better move over activating the wizard's own ability or using it to fuel Inalla's 7 life loss ability. Niv Mizzets, all 3 of the Izzet varieties of him. Not only is he a formidable threat in the air, all 3 produce repeatable sources of card draw and ping, and have great synergy with each other. And there's an infinite combo in the deck involving 2 of these, but more on that later. All 3 are Flying Dragon Wizards for 6, and 2 are 5/5, while the last is 4/4. Draco Genius is 2 blue, 2 red, and 2, draws us a card every time he damages a player, and lets us pay a blue and a red to ping something. Perun is 3 blue and 3 red, can't be countered, pings something every time we draw a card, and draws us a card whenever any player casts an instant or sorcery. Firemind is 2 of each blue, red, and generic, pings something when we draw a card, and can be tapped to do just that. Mercurial Chemister is 3, a blue, and a red for a 2/3 human wizard. We can pay a blue and tap it to draw 2 cards, or a red and a discard in addition to tapping to deal damage to a creature equal to the CMC of the discarded card. So this can both provide us with great card draw, but can also be used to ditch one of our spells if we need a creature gone badly enough. Riptide Director is 2 blue and 2 for a 2/3 human wizard. We can pay that same cost again and tap it to draw a card for each wizard we control. Curiosity and Ophidian Eye are both creature enchantments that allow us to draw a card whenever the enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent. Curiosity costs 1 blue, and Ophidian Eye is 2 more to add flash. Since this doesn't have to be combat damage, we can put this on one of our pingers and draw every time it hits a player. These are also the other half of the infinite combo I mentioned earlier. If we put either of these enchantments on Niv Mizzet Parun or Niv Mizzet the Firemind, those deal a damage when we draw a card. These enchantments draw a card when the creature deals damage, but since this is a May ability, we don't have to. So if we want to knock out one opponent, possibly even two, we might be able to do so without milling ourselves out. We're running a lot of wizards that tap to deal a damage to something. Right now, the reasons for this might not be so apparent, but even on their own, there won't be a single 1/1, 2/2, or even higher that stands a chance of sticking to the field. The festivities begin with Apprentice Sorcerer and Capricious Sorcerer, both of which are 1/1 human wizards for a blue and 2 that can tap to deal a damage to any target. Unfortunately, they can only do this on our turn before attacks. Now we come to the classics. Prodigal Sorcerer and Zurin Spellcaster are a blue and 2 for a 1/1 human wizard that tap to deal damage to any target. Speaking of any target, did I mention how problematic our team of pingers is to planeswalkers? Prodigal Pyromancer is the red shifted version of the prior two and is a red and 2 for a 1/1 human wizard that pings upon being tapped. Wojek Ember Mage is a 1/2 human wizard for a red and 3, and tapping it deals 1 damage to a creature and each other creature that shares a color with it. Be especially careful with it, as many of our creatures are also 1 toughness, but the Ember Mage is too useful for doing things like taking out token armies to pass up. Nightscape Master is 2 black and 2 for a 2/2 zombie wizard that lets us pay 2 blue and tap it to unsummon a creature, or 2 red and tap to deal 2 damage to a creature. The versatility is definitely worth it, and often having this untapped with 2 blue can deter attackers. Shadow Guild Mage is a black for a 1/1 human wizard, and we can tap a blue and it to put one of our creatures on top of our library. This is most useful for saving something important, but otherwise doesn't come up very much. We can also tap a red and it to ping something and ourselves. Izzet Staticaster is a red, blue, and 1 for a 0/3 human wizard with flash and haste. We can tap it to deal 1 damage to a creature and every creature with the same name. Extremely useful for taking out token armies, but just as good for pinging a single creature. Sequata Firewalker is 2 blue and 1 for a 0/1 human wizard with protection from red, and it can tap to ping something. The final wizard pinger is Blood Cultist, a black, red, and 1 for a 1/1 human wizard that can tap to ping a creature, and if it dealt damage to a creature that died in the same turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter. As you'll see, this can get pretty big pretty quickly, and may be a serviceable beater if need be. We have a few non-wizards on our pinger team, due to their sheer usefulness. Cunning Spurk Mage, despite being called Mage, is a 0/1 human shaman for a red and 2. It has haste and taps to ping something. Gelectrode is a red, blue, and 1 for a 0/1 weird that taps to ping, except we untap it whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. We're not running a lot of these, but the incidental extra ping here and there makes Gelectrode worth including. Now that we've introduced the team, let's talk about what makes them more formidable. Archetype of Finality is 2 black and 4 for a 2/3 Gorgon enchantment creature, and it gives all of our creatures Death Touch and strips it from opponents. This means that we can tap any of our pingers to destroy a creature. Some of our pingers that hit multiple targets can be particularly devastating with this out. We're also running Gorgon Flail, Gorgon Head, and Quietus Spike, each of which is an equipment that gives the creature Death Touch. Flail costs and equips for 2, and also gives +1/+1. Gorgon's Head costs 1 and equips for 2, and Spike costs and equips for 3. Spike adds an additional effect, making an opponent we hit with the equipped creature lose half their life. This does need to be combat damage, but we can easily put this on a flyer, or attack an opponent we've decimated to get the creature through. Death Touch isn't the only dirty trick we're bringing to the table. Willbreaker is 2 blue and 3 for a 2/3 human wizard, and it says whenever an opponent's creature gets targeted by our spells and abilities, we gain control of that creature, so long as we have Willbreaker. Dismiss into Dream is a blue and 6 for an enchantment, and it makes all of our opponent's creatures into illusions that are sacrificed whenever they're targeted. This not only includes our ping effects, but also prevents them from equipping, targeting, or enchanting their own creatures. Sigil of Sleep is a single blue for a creature enchantment, and it says that whenever that creature damages a player, we can unsummon a creature they control. Sorceress Queen is 2 black and 1 for a 1/1 human wizard. Like it and a few others on this list, they won't say wizard on them, but the oracle text will back that up. Sorceress Queen can tap to turn another creature into a 0/2. Even on its own, this is very handy for neutralizing an attacker, but paired with 2 of our pingers, this makes for a nice 1/2 punch. Speaking of changing creatures' power and toughness, Polymorphous Jest is 2 blue and 1 for an instant, and it gives all of your opponent's creatures base power toughness 1/1 this turn. This instant is an incredible combat trick on its own, but combined with our ability to deal 1 damage with most of our force, and this can be close to a one-sided board wipe. There are a number of other wizards that had strong synergy with what we're doing, but didn't neatly fit into any category. Fate Stitcher is a blue and 3 for a 1/2 zombie wizard that we can tap to tap or untap another target permanent. We can use this to untap a land for extra mana, untap a creature for an extra activation, or tap down something problematic. Nabin, Dean of Iteration, is a blue and 1 for a 2/1 human wizard, and it has a Panharmonicon-esque effect, doubling triggers when our wizards enter. This is primarily to let us pay another 1 to Inalla's ability to make a second copy of a wizard, but this only works if she's on the field, since Nabin requires it to be a permanent. Information Dealer is a blue and 1 for a 1/1 human wizard that we can tap to reorganize the top X cards of our library, equal to the number of wizards. This is an insanely useful ability, letting us get only what's useful at any given time. Faces of the Past is a blue and 2 for an enchantment, and it says whenever a creature dies, we can tap or untap all creatures that share a type with it. There are a few great synergies this brings when combined with our commander. We can tap all of our wizards for her ability, cast a pinger, pay the 1 to copy it, then have that temporary copy ping and kill itself, letting us untap all of our wizards. We can also pull this trick by copying a legendary wizard and letting the legendary copy be the one to bite it. In a pinch, we can also just have one of our normal wizards ping itself for the greater good. Freed from the Reel is a blue and 2 for a creature enchantment, and it lets us pay a blue to either tap or untap the enchanted creature. This can turn one of our pingers into a veritable machine gun. For each blue we can pump into it, we deal a damage to something. Finally, there's Jalira, Master Polymorphist. She's a blue and 3 for a human wizard that we can pay 2 and a blue and 2 and tap to sacrifice a creature to reveal cards off our library until we reveal a creature and put that into play. We can most notably use this to sacrifice one of Inalla's temporary tokens and get a free creature. Our white package starts with Etherize, which for a blue and 3 is an instant that returns all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. Although not a true board wipe, this can easily turn the tide against the opponent with the greatest board presence and let us pull ahead. Flood of Tears is 2 blue and 4 for a sorcery that returns all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If we had 4 or more things returned, then we get to replay something for free, so that we get a head start on rebuilding. Crux of Fate is 2 black and 3 for a sorcery that either destroys all dragons or all non-dragons. If we have one of our Niv Mizzets out, we can wipe the board without being set back entirely. Whenever possible, I always try to use wipes that are at least partially asymmetrical, if not entirely one-sided. In Garrick's Wake is 7 and 2 black and is a true one-sided board wipe, destroying all creatures and planeswalkers your opponents control. As powerful as Inalla's ability can be, we're running a number of alternative win conditions. Kazarov's Sindra Pureblood is 2 black and 5 for a 4/4 flying vampire, but every time an opponent's creature is dealt damage, we put a +1/+1 counter on him. He also lets us pay a red and 3 to hit a creature for 2 if we're in need of that ability. Deathbringer Thoctor is 4 a black and a red for a 3/3 zombie beast. It gets a +1/+1 counter whenever another creature dies, and we can remove a counter to have it ping any target. Even without any other enhancements, the Thoctor is a great addition to the team, capable of growing very big very quickly, but the true magic happens when we give it Death Touch, allowing it to mow down everything else at the table that doesn't have Indestructible, Hexproof, or Shroud. Silverclad Ferocidons is 2 red and 5 for an 8/5 dinosaur, and whenever it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. We can turn 4 of our fingers on this each turn and quickly reduce opponents to empty boards. It's like Annihilator that doesn't require attacking, hits all opponents, and happens every turn. Sun-Crowned Hunters is 2 red and 4 for a 5/4 dinosaur, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals 3 damage to an opponent. This acts as a sort of backup to Inalla, letting us turn 3 of our fingers on this each turn and deal 9 damage. Counter magic is one of the best ways to protect our important pieces, prevent combos from being assembled, and stop board wipes when we're ahead. In this deck, we're running Wizard's Retort and Counterspell, both of which in this deck cost 2 blue to counter a spell. If for some reason we don't have a wizard, then we'll pay 3 for Retort instead. We're also including Disruptive Pit Mage, Disruptive Student, and Mundungu. Each cost 3 for a 1/1 human wizard that we can tap to counter a spell unless the controller pays 1, and with Mundungu, they also pay 1 life. While these probably aren't going to counter anything unless you have an opponent that just isn't paying attention, each is going to force our opponents to keep mana open or risk it, which can delay our opponents while they get the spare mana out. In other words, they're stacks pieces in disguise. Soratami Savant is 2 blue and 2 for a 2/2 Moonfolk wizard with flying, and it allows us to pay 3 and bounce one of our lands to counter a spell unless they also pay 3. Daring Apprentice is 2 blue and 1 for a 1/1 human wizard, and we can tap and sack it to counter a spell. This is primarily a psychological threat to our opponents. Nobody is going to cast anything big and game-ending while this is on the board, or they might see it wasted. This is one of those instances where the threat of power can be greater than the use of it. Our mana base kicks off with Unclaimed Territory, which has us pick a creature type, and it either produces colorless or any color, but only to cast that creature type. Command Tower produces 1 of any color in our color identity. Exotic Orchard produces any color that an opponent's land produces. Oftentimes, an opponent has out a land that can tap for any color, and will have access to all 5. But even if that doesn't happen, we can usually have access to at least 2 of our 3 colors, if not all 3. Sunken Hollow taps for either black or blue, and enters untapped if we have 2 or more basics. Crumbling Necropolis enters tapped, and taps for all 3 of our colors. Sheevan Reef enters untapped, and either taps for colorless, or for red or blue, but deals us 1 damage. Canyon Slough taps for black or red, and enters tapped, or we can pay 2 to cycle it. Fetid Pools is the same, except it produces black or blue. Spire of Industry taps for either colorless or for any color, but at the cost of 1 life and the requirement that we have an artifact in play. There are 11 in the deck, so it's a good chance that we'll have one. We've also got Dimir, Izzet, and Rakdos guild gates, each entering tapped and producing that guild's colors. We're also running Vivid Crag, Creek, and Marsh. They enter tapped with 2 charge counters, and they tap for red, blue, or black respectively, or for any color if we remove a charge counter. Swiftwater Cliffs, Akum Refuge, and Dismal Backwater enter tapped and give us 1 life when they do, and they each tap for 2 different colors. Bloodfell Caves and Jawar Isle Refuge are more of the same, entering tapped, 1 life, 1 of 2 mana. Then finally there's Crypt of the Eternals, which enters untapped, gives us 1 life, and either taps for colorless, or lets us filter 1 mana into any of our 3 colors. We round out the mana base with 9 islands, 3 swamps, and 4 mountains. So what does all this wizardry cost us? Going off TCG player prices, using cards of any condition, and without shipping, we come in at just under budget at $24.98. Or in wizard money, 5 galleons, 3 sickles, and 8 canuts. I'd like to thank all of our viewers, without whom this episode would not have been possible, and thanks to my friend Travis for the initial idea. If you like what we're doing here, spread the word by subscribing, sharing, Pony Express, or just leave a comment telling us what we missed and what you'd like to see in the future. Thank you again, and see you next video.